Welcome back to Lawyer Stories, where we delve into the intriguing and complex facets of the legal world, drawing from real-world scenarios our consulting firm encounters. Today, I'll discuss a recent query from a long-standing client, a prominent law firm. This wasn't a direct case they litigated, but a request for guidance stemming from a fascinating hypothetical discussion. The initial scenario involved an audacious hypothetical: a juror, fed up with deliberations, contemplating texting or passing a note to fellow jurors, stating, "Let's all just vote not guilty so we can go home." The firm was curious about the legal implications for the juror and trial integrity. It seems simple, but opens a Pandora's box. First, let's address immediate practicalities. A juror sending a text during deliberations. Most jurisdictions strictly curtail or prohibit jurors' access to personal electronic devices, especially cell phones. Jurors typically surrender phones or keep them off, so direct texting would be a physical impossibility due to court protocols. However, the intent remains the core legal issue. Even if no phone is involved, the sentiment, "Let's just vote this way so we can all go home," expressed verbally, constitutes a significant problem. This isn't mere impatience, it's often considered juror misconduct due to improper influence. Jurors are sworn to decide based solely on evidence and law, not personal convenience. Introducing personal convenience directly contravenes their fundamental duty. Such an act can lead to severe consequences: a mistrial, appeal, or retrial. The offending juror could face penalties from fines to jail time, depending on severity and jurisdiction. The purpose of a jury trial is to seek justice, not to facilitate early dismissal. This brings us to a crucial distinction: improper influence versus jury nullification. Many think of nullification when juries deviate from fact-finding. Jury nullification occurs when jurors, believing a defendant guilty, acquit because they disagree with the law, its application, or punishment. This allows juries to act as the community's conscience. A classic example: a defendant cultivating cannabis in a state where it's illegal. A jury, believing cannabis laws unjust, could vote not guilty, despite overwhelming evidence. This is a legally protected, albeit rarely encouraged, aspect of jury power. However, nullification is not, "I don't care, I just want to go home." The motivations are entirely different. One is a principled, albeit controversial, stand on the law. The other is a dereliction of duty. The concept of a unanimous verdict is also central. Traditionally, in criminal cases in the US, a unanimous verdict, all 12 jurors agree, is required for conviction and acquittal. This high bar ensures guilt is established beyond a reasonable doubt, and acquittal represents broad consensus. If a jury cannot reach a unanimous decision, it results in a hung jury and a mistrial. The prosecution can then decide whether to retry. Judges almost always prefer a unanimous verdict for finality. Historically, some states allowed non-unanimous verdicts for convictions. However, Ramos v. Louisiana affirmed the Sixth Amendment requires unanimous jury verdicts in serious criminal cases. Civil juries often operate on a majority basis, and some jurisdictions have lower thresholds for acquittal, though unanimity for a guilty verdict remains bedrock. Now, to illustrate these points, the law firm's inquiry expanded to a recent, real-world example shared by a juror. This juror recounted a fascinating experience that underscores the complexities and frustrations inherent in the system. The case involved a misdemeanor resist charge from a defendant driving 100 miles per hour without a license. The resist charge stemmed from his failure to pull over immediately when a police officer, sirens blaring, tailgated him for approximately 3.5 minutes on an empty rural highway at night. The officer eventually pulled alongside, pointed, and even nudged his car to the shoulder before he finally stopped. Video evidence clearly showed the defendant's actions and the officer's prolonged attempt. The core legal issue revolved around knowingly resist. The defense was intriguing. The defendant claimed to be from country X, where, he asserted, traffic stop protocol differed significantly from the continuous sirens and tailgating common in the US. He argued that in his home country, motorcycle police would pull alongside and point to stop, implying US signals were not clear to him. His lack of a US driver's license, and implicitly his unfamiliarity with US laws, made his claim of not understanding plausible. This was the ambiguity the jury faced. During deliberations, this case became a stark example of a jury wrestling with reasonable doubt. The jury split 10-2, leaning towards not guilty. The majority argued insufficient evidence definitively contradicted the defendant's testimony regarding his cultural background and his claim of not understanding the instruction. They felt if he genuinely didn't comprehend that the officer wanted him to stop, then he couldn't have knowingly resisted. This highlights the specific legal definition of knowingly. Acting with awareness of conduct, not necessarily knowledge that the conduct is illegal. Ignorance of an instruction is different. If you are shouted at in a language you do not understand, can you knowingly refuse? The two jurors holding out for guilty, including the storyteller, found this defense implausible. Their argument, 3.5 minutes of a police cruiser with sirens and flashing lights, is a universal signal. They contended that even if initial signals were unclear, he would have gained knowledge over the extended duration. Furthermore, they believed his country X testimony lacked credibility, given common understanding that most countries expect drivers to respond to police lights and sirens. This was a critical prosecutorial failing. Our analysis, based on the juror's account, suggested several prosecutorial weaknesses. The prosecutor, confident in video evidence, failed to adequately challenge the defendant's country X testimony. A simple inquiry into actual traffic laws would have either corroborated or, more likely, impeached his claim during trial. Indeed, the juror himself, after the trial, independently researched and found that country X does require drivers to stop for police sirens, directly contradicting the defendant's core defense. Moreover, the prosecutor neglected to question the defendant's passengers about what was discussed or understood in the car. These omissions left a significant gap that the not guilty jurors could reasonably latch onto as creating reasonable doubt. The judge, by allowing the culture X argument to stand without rigorous substantiation, also inadvertently contributed to the ambiguity. Case law clarifies knowingly requires awareness of facts, not necessarily awareness of the law. However, applying this to whether one knows an instruction to stop implies understanding the instruction itself. Despite strong arguments from the two guilty holdouts, the jury remained hung at 10-2. The strong-hand guilty holdout ultimately conceded to another hung verdict, which the judge accepted. This decision resulted in a mistrial. For the defendant, this effectively amounted to an acquittal on the resist charge. Given the minor misdemeanor and expense of a retrial, the prosecutor will likely decline to pursue it further. This outcome highlights the immense power of a single juror or determined minority. This power prevents conviction, particularly when the prosecution's case has weaknesses. This case study demonstrates several critical points. Firstly, the serious responsibility of a juror. The desire to go home, while understandable, is not a legally permissible basis for a verdict. Juror misconduct undermines justice. Secondly, it underscores the intricate nature of legal definitions, where a single word like knowingly can pivot the entire trial outcome, requiring careful instruction and rigorous argument. Thirdly, it exposes how prosecutorial preparedness, or lack thereof, significantly impacts a trial's trajectory, even with clear video. A failure to anticipate and counter defense arguments can lead to a hung jury or acquittal. The human element in jury trials is undeniable and often unpredictable. This jury included computer programmers and an elderly juror with memory issues, raising questions about comprehension. Juror dynamics complicate justice. While jurors are selected via *voir dire to identify biases or incapacities, these can be subtle or missed. This individual dynamic further complicates justice, underscoring why our advice often extends beyond legal theory to include practical strategies for navigating these human variables. Understanding these nuances is paramount. In conclusion, the hypothetical question about improper juror influence and the real-world example it brought forth reveal the complex interplay of evidence, legal interpretation, prosecutorial strategy, and human judgment that defines our justice system. For our clients, whether navigating corporate law or litigation, understanding these nuances is paramount. It's a constant reminder that, even in seemingly straightforward cases, the path to justice is rarely linear. The decisions made in a jury room carry profound weight, influencing outcomes for individuals and the broader legal landscape. We appreciate your attention to these compelling narratives of the legal world.